Hey friends, it's Russ. Looking at Module 4, let me talk you through some things on the PowerPoint here. I kick off with a point to ponder, that leadership is the gift that a community bestows upon itself. Often we can think of an individual leader or even a leadership cadre, small group of authorized folks, and say, yeah, that makes sense to me. But have we thought about creating a setting where leadership is constantly reiterating itself, constantly deepening itself, constantly expanding, being given away, and as it populates its uh, community, incubates leadership, the entire community deepens. People take initiative in the parking lots. They take initiative in the women's restroom, men's restrooms. They don't wait for someone to give orders or instructions. Wherever leader needy uh, actions being called for, people are enough to move the game forward. The mission moves forward. Um, Begin pondering that, kicking around inside of our conversation areas. Some of the first things you see in the PowerPoint are a discussion out of a book, which isn't assigned in this class, in case you're wondering. Um, a book regarding called the Leaderful Organization. I love the language I love the idea that it's weird language, leaderful, but it communicates. A organization that is full and overflowing with leadership. There are four expressions of the leaderful organization that Raylan talks about in his book, and I happen to found a freebie PDF uh, that summarizes a lot in the book, an academic paper that Raylan presented. I've uploaded it for you, so that gives you a little more context on that. Begin thinking about leadership being concurrent, being collective, um, compassionate. Um, uh, what am I missing? Concurrent. I'm missing one of them. I can't see my slides very well as I'm talking through this. Um, that's a first thing to talk about. Well, what language would we use to talk about an organization that has moved to a leadership culture rather than merely leadership programming? And that's what I want to convey as a possibility, that there are ways to culture an organization so that the mentoring and coaching, interpersonal relationships are part of what we do around here. Um, you'll see a line of slides that talk about um, living at a different culture. This comes from a story as you look at Kip Keino, living high, living high, training low, and living at a different altitude. That comes from a story of a buddy of mine who's a nationally ranked cyclist named Todd. Um, Todd, when he was in college, he and his buddies, they taped off all their windows. They purchased something that are called oxygen tents, these machines that generate oxygen level um, that can approximate altitude. So he and his buddies, in order to get expanded lungs, set the altitude of their room, their college room, these other cyclists, to 6,000 feet. When they were out on the campus, they lived like everybody else at sea level or whatever the altitude was of their campus. But when they went inside of their apartment, they lived at 6,000 feet oxygen level. It's a different way of thinking about what they were trying to condition into themselves so that they could be competitive in the cycling arena. Well, what if the oxygen level, what if the altitude level was set inside of your organization so that people were just assumed that developing leaders was what they were supposed to do? I give you a couple examples. The Orpheus Chamber Orchestra. Get online, do some Googling, figure out what the Orpheus Chamber Orchestra is and how it might represent a model of people living, having made structural commitments to live at a different altitude in terms of sharing and spreading the leadership. People, businesses around the country sign up, pay big money to come and watch the Orpheus Chamber Orchestra practice, rehearse. Why would businesses pay big bucks, multiple thousands of dollars, to watch an orchestra rehearse? There's something about this orchestra or something that's missing in this orchestra that has set the altitude high. Um, I'll let you go and find out what that is, and then let's see if it shows up inside of some of our discussions. The next set of slides you see there are about me. It's about how I reflected on an experience that I had really as a late teenager, as a military drill instructor training officer candidates for the U.S. Marine Corps, how that experience imprinted me for a belief that people could live at a high altitude. I kind of like the quotation on the Marine recruiting poster board. It says, "Superior thinking has always overwhelmed superior force." Now, certainly that's a cognitive model of resources, that thinking is what gets it done. But really consider uh, that there are advantages organizations can have simply because they have set the thermostat at a certain level uh, in terms of performance and expectation. Let's see if that conversation comes up inside of the group. As we press beyond that, you'll see kind of the rationale for the paper that I wrote toward a uh, reflex theory of leadership. Give some time to that paper. You'll get some sense of where I get the idea that you can condition folks to be more and more disposed to leadership development, leadership training, and leadership performance as a matter of habitus. I give you a model that I have been thinking through, that I use inside of courses, particularly face-to-face courses where I can serve very much as a staff instructor and coach folks in some of the conditioning moments. Regardless whether you would agree with the paper or whether you like the results that the Marines get and my cyclist friends get and the Orpheus Chamber Orchestra gets, and other organizations that I could continue to point to which prioritize leadership development as a matter of culturing, you have to admit that because of the intensive nature of what you're trying to achieve inside of people and inside of an organization, you have got to have a plan. The intensity of the transformation that you are hoping for requires a equal and matching level of intentionality in order to achieve it. That's the takeaway from that point. So I'd lay out in front of you something that looks like a multicolored clamshell that looks at the 4 levels inside of an organization that you can anticipate that someone is going to be prepared for, someone's going to be called for, there's got to be a succession plan for. I'd be suggesting that you have a plan for developing folks at each one of those levels. I'm going to upload a paper called The What of Leadership Development that talks about what I would do at those 4 levels. And then lastly, I spent some conversation talking about the different kinds of contexts of training and the kinds of people who need to be trained. The types A through E are a good picture of that. And I'm going to load a paper for you around LMX theory, Leadership Member Exchange Theory. Hope to hear you answer this question when we're online. What is it about leadership member exchange theory that Russell thinks can be a real possibility of translating the one-on-one mentoring coaching relationship into a structural cultural relationship? LMX works its way out through 3 phases. How do we make from strangers acquaintances? How do we turn acquaintances into strangers, into acquaintances, and into partners? So that's a wrap on the PowerPoint. Look forward to talking with you online.